Okay, hi guys. Uh, this is an intro to uh, the. Let me get this right. Okay, this is an intro to the GUI4sher package. The GUI4sher package is designed to combine the best features of Visual, Basic, and Python. Now, because I can't do that, I'll put that over there. Okay. So what are the so the idea is that I liked certain things when I was teaching Visual Basic for beginning programming. And what they were in Visual Basic was you had a graphical user interface. That meant that students can start manipulating graphical objects almost immediately and use them to do interesting things. And it's another nice feature was autosave, which means that it automatically saved everything the student did without them having to run around and remembering to hit the save button. So you didn't work for an hour and then everything disappears. And finally, you can just click on something and an app would appear that you can give away to friends and family and whatnot. And so those are very nice features of when teaching, because it gets students involved in doing useful things with programming, or at least fun things with programming right away. Now, the nice features of Python is no typing, so you don't have to do a complex discussion with the language, and explain to it what you're doing. You just say x gets 1, and then x gets 1. Immediate execution, which means you can try out lines immediately. You don't have to write 75 lines before anything happens. It has a shell to do the immediate execution in, and it has an easy syntax with built-in some people might hate it, but I sort of like indenting built into the language. As you can see, I indent all my stuff. Now, what are the bad features of Python? Well, of Visual Basic to start with. Okay, so there were a lot of things about Visual Basic that was really bad. One of them was it was extremely difficult to install. Often on many machines, it just didn't want to install at all. It was very easy to install the wrong version and get a completely different version. And it had this problem with trying to, when you did install it, it wanted to install every language in the known universe. And that meant that there was a very low probability that the students actually ended up programming in the language you wanted them to. Okay, and so that all comes down to this concept, which is the actual VB looked a lot like it was built by a large team of caffeinated squirrels. So the advantage of GUI4sher is I'm not a squirrel, so no squirrel. Okay, there were many languages, as I discussed. VB tend to run giant menus and nested menus. So not only were the menus individually gigantic, running all the way up and down the screen, and sometimes have to scroll, and all the way across the screen, but within each menu was another menu, and in them so often there was a third menu, and so on. And you picked the wrong menu, and you didn't know what were in the menus, and if you picked, and a lot of them didn't do exactly what they sounded like they should do, particularly the save buttons. When you ran Visual Basic, the windows would rearrange themselves a lot, and even sometimes spontaneously rearrange themselves. So students would suddenly find that they lost their properties menu or window or some other window that they needed to make the thing work. And I had to go over, I spent more time going around fixing their windows than anything else. And also there were just too many windows and no really great way to organize them. So you couldn't run Visual Basic without like 6 windows up at a time. There was building a GUI involved manipulating at least 2 languages, a language that expressed where all the objects went, and a completely different language that expressed what the languages did, what the different GUI objects did. When you hit the save button, it would just scatter the project around. I never even could find half the files that you needed to run the project. It made it totally useless, except if you tried to move the project to a different machine. And that came down to a big issue, which was it was sort of difficult to submit a VB project. You had to teach them how to zip up dozens and dozens of files. It's just a huge mess. Now, Python doesn't have a lot of evil, but there's a couple of issues. One, relatively minor issues, is the shell has too much dwim. So if you run the idle shell, and you run the same line in a file, it often behaves differently. In particular, if you say in idle, let's bring up idle. If I run idle, running idle, and there it is. It says Python shell, and you type something like 5 plus 6. You get 11. Now, I'm going to, but you have a Python file, and you write 5 plus 6 here, and you click run, and it's going to ask me to save it, which is not a real problem, and I'll call this guy, what do I want to call that? Oops, get my way. Yeah. Okay, and so I'm going to go to Downloads and create a folder called Project. We're going to use this in a second. Project. And I'm going to save in project this guy, and I'm going to name him add. So now I've just created add.py, and I've ran it, and nothing happened. Because the idle shell looked at 5 plus 6 and deduced that I wanted to print the value out. But the language, it said, okay, I added 5 plus 6. It does not. So, inconsistent dwim is really the problem. Is that sometimes the shell does dwim, but the files do not. And so having 2 completely different parts of the same language behave differently is inherently confusing. A more bigger issue is it's just boring unless you have graphics. Basically, students don't care that to be able to print, to keep track of, how much, being able to print, what's your age, and the fact that if you're over 25, the ice cream costs more, or whatever it is. All of these text-based interactive things are just boring. And students really light up with graphics. So, okay, now for GUI4sher, you need to download idle. But that's always easy. Students are very successful downloading. Now, it's a little more complicated if they don't have a PC or Mac. PyDroid on Android can run most of GUI4sher. I don't have an iPad, so I don't know if Pythonista can. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to do a little investigation now. So to do that, downloading GUI4sher though is really easy. Okay, you go to the website. Go to the website. Yeah. And you click on. Now here is a whole discussion, very similar to what I just said. And you go to a website and you click the very first thing here is download GUI4sher. And I'm going to download that to, where did I put that? Downloads. Downloads, in here, project. And here's GUI4sher.py. And I just downloaded it. And then I run it. Okay, so I'm going to go to downloads and I put project and run it. And the first thing GUI4sher is going to do is ask for the name of the project. Which is for GUI or graphics. Let's see. So let's call this, okay. So I'm going to go, once again, I'm going to tell it that we're going to work in project. And I'm going to name this guy example. And at this point, what I have is up here is a graphics window. This is where the graphics will appear. The GUI and graphics will appear. Up here is an explanation of, shows me what the file I'm working with is, which is d:\downloads/projects example.py. And the rest of this is going to be the click functions, which is where the event handlers are going to be, is in example underbar clicks.py. So a project is going to consist of two files that are in the same folder with GUI4sher, example.py and example clicks.py. And down here is a copyright notice where it explains who and what. So when a student wants, one of the first things they might do is add an author, the student. And now it says copyright David B. Sher and the student 2020. There's also update year. Right now it's 2020, so it's not a problem, which will change the copyright notice's year to the current year. And there's ability to add thanks to people who aren't exactly authors, but who were helpful anyway. Now, the next time the student wants to work on the project, right? So they logged out, they come back, they want to work on the project again. Instead of clicking on GUI, they just click on the project. And here it is. And there it is, copyright David B. Sher and the student. Okay? So this time they don't have to tell it where the project is, they just click on it. And they're there. And then you can say, place a rectangle. And you gotta give, everything's gotta have a name. So if you don't put a name in as a parameter, it will ask for it. And the name of the shape of the GUI, let's call this Ralph, the rectangle. And click on a corner of Ralph. Click on another corner of Ralph. And here we see that. And once again, once you get, and so you see, you can move to drawing stuff almost immediately. It's a fairly natural thing. When I did place, you saw little guidelines appeared. We'll talk more about that in the next video. And once again, when I go back, there's Ralph the rectangle. And if I want to see, I can print Ralph. Now, underlying the GUI is a object-oriented, so Ralph has all these get methods like get outline, and it says the outline of Ralph is black. Okay. And so we'll talk, so the next video is on how to do graphics using this guy. And, oh, by the way, the shell does anything you like. You can do 1 plus 5 here, just like before, but it acts just like that. It just added 1 plus 5. If you wanted to tell you what the result was, you have to type print. So this helps the students understand the computer only does what you tell it to, not what you mean it to do. This has very little DWIM in it. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and we will... Oh, come on, be good.